The industrial mop bucket scraped against the polished concrete floor as Sergeant Maya Rodriguez wrung out the dirty water for the fourth time that morning, her calloused hands moving with the mechanical precision of someone who had learned to find purpose in the most mundane tasks. At 31, she had perfected the art of being invisible in the sprawling corridors of Fort Carson's administrative complex, arriving before the morning formation, working through the lunch break, and somehow managing to clean hundreds of offices without any of the personnel really noticing her face. What none of them knew was that those same steady hands had once gripped weapons that officially didn't exist, leading missions in territories that never appeared on any map, executing operations that would have been impossible for anyone who hadn't spent years dancing with death in the world's most dangerous places. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Maya's dark hair was pulled back in regulation military style, and her faded ACU uniform bore only basic rank insignia and a simple name tape that read Rodriguez M. Nothing about her appearance suggested that she had once been whispered about in Pentagon briefings, or that her operational code name had been spoken with reverence in classified facilities across 4 continents. She looked exactly like what she appeared to be, a disciplined but unremarkable enlisted soldier assigned to janitorial duties in a rear echelon support role, mopping floors and emptying trash cans for officers who never looked twice at her face. The morning sun streamed through the reinforced windows of Building 1444, casting long shadows across the waxed linoleum as Maya refilled paper towel dispensers and checked the soap dispensers in the women's restrooms for the 3rd time. The hallways buzzed with the constant activity of administrative personnel, finance clerks, and logistics coordinators who had no idea they were walking past someone who had once vanished into the night in countries that officially denied her presence and never returned through normal channels. Colonel Patricia Hawkins strode through the building's main entrance at exactly 0800 hours, her dress blues crisp and immaculate, her numerous ribbons and badges catching the fluorescent lighting like polished metals in a display case. She moved with the confident authority of someone who had never questioned her place in the military hierarchy, never doubted whether she belonged in positions of command and responsibility. Behind her, 3 staff officers followed in precise formation, their conversation filled with technical discussions about logistics optimization and the casual superiority of field-grade officers who had never faced anything more dangerous than a budget review. "Coffee black, 2 sugars," Colonel Hawkins announced without looking at Maya as she passed the small break area where Maya was restocking supplies, her voice carrying the automatic expectation of immediate compliance that came from years of having subordinates anticipate her every need. The other officers filed past toward the conference room, their discussion continuing without acknowledgement of the enlisted soldier who was obviously there to serve their administrative requirements. Maya nodded silently and prepared the coffee, her brown eyes focused on the task, while Colonel Hawkins continued talking to her staff about personnel management strategies and efficiency improvements. To them, Maya was simply part of the building's infrastructure, animated enough to perform cleaning duties and basic services, but not quite significant enough to warrant basic military courtesy or recognition as a fellow soldier. "The problem with today's junior enlisted," Colonel Hawkins was saying, her voice loud enough to carry across the entire administrative area, "is that they lack the discipline and mental toughness that real military service requires. Half of them think showing up and following basic orders makes them soldiers, when actual military excellence demands capabilities they can't even comprehend." Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh nodded eagerly, clearly hoping to impress her superior officer with enthusiastic agreement. "Ma'am, I've noticed that many of the support personnel seem to think that completing routine tasks is somehow equivalent to real military achievement. They don't understand what it means to face genuine responsibility under pressure." Maya's hand paused for just a fraction of a second as she set down the coffee cup, but the movement was so subtle that none of the officers noticed. She had heard similar conversations countless times over the past 18 months, administrative personnel discussing theoretical concepts of military excellence, while demonstrating the kind of garrison mentality that would have gotten people killed in environments where Maya had operated for years. The conversations always followed the same patterns. Officers who had spent their careers in comfortable positions explaining why certain soldiers lacked the intellectual capacity or emotional resilience for demanding military roles, while Maya continued her invisible work routine. She wiped down surfaces, organized supply closets, and maintained facilities with the same quiet efficiency she brought to every task, knowing that her current assignment served purposes that these officers couldn't understand. The issue with support roles, Colonel Hawkins continued, warming to her favorite subject of military hierarchy and professional standards, is that they attract personnel who simply don't possess the mental acuity or leadership potential required for positions of real authority. Janitorial duties, basic maintenance, routine administrative support, these are appropriate assignments for soldiers who lack the qualifications for more demanding responsibilities. She took a sip of coffee and made a disapproving face. This tastes like it was prepared by someone who's never understood that attention to detail matters in military service. Probably the closest this facility has ever come to actual military standards. The other officers laughed at her observation, their amusement echoing through the administrative area while Maya continued her silent work routine. She cleaned computer keyboards, emptied waste baskets, and restocked supply cabinets, moving through her duties with the same methodical precision she brought to every assignment. But if any of them had looked closely, really observed her movements, they might have noticed the way Maya unconsciously maintained situational awareness of everyone in the building. They might have seen how her eyes automatically tracked potential threats and escape routes whenever new personnel entered the area. They might have observed the unconscious way she positioned herself to maintain clear sightlines and tactical advantages, even while performing routine cleaning duties. Around her neck, hidden beneath her uniform shirt, Maya wore a small titanium pendant shaped like a lightning bolt crossed with a dagger. She touched it occasionally when she thought no one was looking, her thumb tracing the worn surface with the familiarity of long habit. It was the only visible reminder of a career that officially had never existed, operations that had been erased from every database, and achievements that had been classified beyond every level of normal military recognition. The officers finished their coffee break and moved toward the conference room, Colonel Hawkins making one final comment about civilian contractors and enlisted personnel who didn't understand the difference between showing up for work and demonstrating actual military competence. Maya watched them go through the building's large windows, then began clearing their table with the same methodical care she applied to every aspect of her current assignment. Through the glass, she could see them clustered around Colonel Hawkins's presentation materials, examining what appeared to be organizational charts and efficiency metrics. Their animated discussion was clearly visible even from inside the building, their gestures indicating administrative details and management theories that they found professionally significant. Maya knew organizational structures and personnel management better than any of them realized, having commanded operations that required coordination between multiple agencies and foreign military units, in environments where communication failures meant death. But Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, the janitor, wasn't supposed to know anything about advanced military operations or organizational leadership. She was supposed to clean floors, empty trash, and maintain facilities, while officers with college degrees and career development courses made decisions about military efficiency and personnel utilization. As she loaded cleaning supplies into the industrial cart, Maya allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Let them discuss theoretical concepts of military excellence and leadership principles they had learned in comfortable classrooms. Let them debate the qualifications required for demanding military assignments and the mental toughness needed for real operational responsibility. Soon enough, circumstances would arise that would remind everyone why certain legends never truly disappear from military service. They just change uniforms, accept different assignments, and wait for the moment when their country needs them to demonstrate capabilities that officially no longer exist. The question wasn't whether these confident administrative officers would discover who was cleaning their offices and preparing their coffee. The question was whether they would be ready for the truth when a crisis demanded skills that existed far beyond their understanding of military excellence, courage, and the extraordinary people who sometimes hide in the most ordinary assignments. Maya had spent 18 months watching garrison soldiers discuss military theory while she performed duties that kept her invisible but positioned where she could monitor potential threats to base security. She had observed personnel who confused administrative efficiency with operational excellence, officers who mistook comfortable assignments for military competence, and leaders who had never faced situations where their decisions would determine whether people lived or died. But Maya Rodriguez understood something that Colonel Hawkins and her staff would never learn through training courses or career development programs. Real military excellence wasn't demonstrated through rank structure or professional development opportunities. It was proven through actions taken when failure meant consequences that couldn't be corrected through administrative procedures or personnel reassignments. The building settled into its morning routine while Maya continued her invisible work, maintaining the facilities where administrative personnel planned logistics operations and personnel management strategies. None of them suspected that the quiet soldier emptying their wastebaskets had once coordinated operations that had prevented international incidents, eliminated threats that could have destabilized entire regions, and completed missions that had required capabilities far beyond anything these garrison personnel could imagine. Maya's current assignment served multiple purposes that weren't reflected in any official duty description. She maintained perfect physical conditioning through workouts that pushed her beyond the standards required for her apparent military occupational specialty. She practiced skills that weren't taught in basic military training or advanced individual training courses. And she monitored communications and personnel activities for indicators of security threats that regular base security couldn't detect. The administrative officers continued their conference room discussion while Maya worked nearby, their voices carrying through the building as they debated efficiency improvements and personnel utilization strategies. Colonel Hawkins was explaining why certain soldiers required closer supervision and more detailed task assignments, apparently convinced that her management theories represented advanced military leadership. Maya listened with the detached interest of someone who had commanded operations where leadership meant making split-second decisions with incomplete information while people's lives hung in the balance. She had led multinational teams through environments where theoretical leadership principles were useless, and only practical competence under extreme pressure determined mission success. But those experiences existed in classified files that these administrative officers would never see, in operational reports that had been sealed beyond their security clearances, and in military records that officially belonged to someone who no longer existed in any personnel database. Maya finished her morning cleaning routine and moved toward the supply closet to organize inventory, her movements carrying the unconscious grace of someone who had maintained peak physical condition for purposes that extended far beyond routine garrison duties. She understood that her current role required patience, discretion, and the ability to remain professionally invisible while maintaining readiness for assignments that might never come. The morning passed quietly, with administrative personnel focused on their routine duties while Maya maintained the facilities that supported their comfortable garrison lifestyle. None of them realized that they were working alongside someone whose forgotten accomplishments had contributed to national security in ways that would never be publicly acknowledged, whose operational experience exceeded anything in their collective service records, and whose current assignment represented a level of military service that existed far beyond their understanding of duty, sacrifice, and silent professionalism. The systematic undermining began during the Tuesday morning staff meeting when Colonel Hawkins decided that Building 1444's administrative conference room would serve as her personal platform for demonstrating superior military knowledge and leadership expertise. She had apparently concluded that conducting detailed critiques of enlisted performance in front of multiple witnesses would establish her authority while educating junior officers about proper military standards and the importance of maintaining appropriate hierarchical boundaries. Rodriguez, Colonel Hawkins called out sharply as Maya entered the conference area to empty wastebaskets and wipe down surfaces, her voice carrying the deliberate volume of someone ensuring maximum audience for what was clearly intended as a teaching moment. I want to discuss your performance standards and attention to detail. Real soldiers understand that military excellence requires precision in every task, no matter how basic. Maya paused in her cleaning routine and turned toward the colonel with the neutral expression she had perfected during months of similar encounters. Yes, ma'am. How can I improve my performance? Colonel Hawkins gestured toward the coffee station with theatrical disapproval, her movements calculated to demonstrate leadership presence for the benefit of her assembled staff officers. Yesterday's coffee was barely acceptable by civilian standards, let alone military requirements. In my experience, soldiers who can't master simple tasks like beverage preparation typically lack the mental discipline required for more demanding responsibilities. The three staff officers seated around the conference table shifted uncomfortably, their body language suggesting awareness that they were witnessing something unprofessional, but military hierarchy prevented subordinates from questioning their superiors' conduct, even when that superior was clearly using enlisted personnel for public humiliation exercises. Furthermore, Colonel Hawkins continued, warming to her demonstration of leadership authority, I've noticed that your uniform appearance, while technically within regulations, shows the kind of casual attitude that indicates insufficient pride in military service. Your boots could be more highly polished, your brass could show more attention to detail, and your overall military bearing suggests someone who views this assignment as temporary employment rather than professional military service. Maya maintained her respectful posture while Colonel Hawkins delivered what was obviously a prepared lecture about military standards, professional development, and the importance of maintaining appropriate expectations for enlisted personnel who had demonstrated limited potential for advancement beyond basic support roles. Major Stephen Chen, whose uncomfortable expression indicated recognition that he was witnessing inappropriate leadership behavior, finally attempted diplomatic intervention. Ma'am, perhaps we could discuss administrative efficiency metrics instead of individual personnel performance issues. Colonel Hawkins dismissed his suggestion with the confidence of someone who had never questioned her right to use subordinates for whatever purposes served her leadership development goals. Major Chen, this is exactly the kind of leadership training that junior officers need to observe. Understanding how to address performance deficiencies while maintaining proper military hierarchy is essential for effective command responsibility. She turned back to Maya with the expression of someone delivering crucial military education to an obviously limited audience. Rodriguez, I want you to understand something important about military service. This isn't civilian employment where showing up and completing basic tasks earns automatic respect. Real military excellence requires intellectual capabilities, leadership potential, and professional competence that, frankly, most enlisted personnel simply don't possess. The humiliation escalated when Colonel Hawkins began using Maya's presence to deliver impromptu lectures about military theory, leadership principles, and operational planning to her staff officers. She would schedule meetings during Maya's cleaning shifts, ensuring maximum audience for her educational demonstrations about the intellectual differences between officers and enlisted personnel. Watch this, Colonel Hawkins announced to Captain Lisa Martinez during one particularly cruel session. I'm going to explain basic military decision-making processes to our custodial staff here. Notice how she nods and pretends to understand, even though the concepts are completely beyond her educational background and professional experience. Maya continued her cleaning duties while enduring detailed explanations of logistics coordination, personnel management strategies, risk assessment methodologies, and operational planning principles. Information she had applied at levels of complexity and responsibility that Colonel Hawkins had never approached, in environments where theoretical knowledge wasn't sufficient for survival, let alone mission success. But Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, the janitor, wasn't supposed to know anything about advanced military operations or strategic planning. So she listened politely, maintained appropriate military courtesy, and continued performing her assigned duties while people who had no idea of her actual qualifications treated her like a convenient target for demonstrating their supposed intellectual superiority. The psychological warfare intensified when Colonel Hawkins discovered Maya's lightning bolt and dagger pendant during a particularly busy morning when Maya was restocking supplies in the conference room. Maya had been reaching across a table to replace paper supplies when the chain slipped out from beneath her uniform collar, revealing the small titanium symbol for just a moment before she could conceal it again. Well, well, Colonel Hawkins said with malicious satisfaction, our custodial staff has military jewelry. Let me guess. You bought that at the post-exchange gift shop, trying to pretend you have some connection to real military operations. Maya's expression remained neutral, but her hand unconsciously moved to cover the pendant through her uniform shirt. That piece of titanium had been handcrafted in a classified facility by personnel who understood its significance, awarded only to operators who had completed missions that couldn't be officially acknowledged. It represented achievements that exceeded anything in Colonel Hawkins's service record, but Maya couldn't defend its importance without revealing everything she had worked to keep classified. It's probably from some military surplus store, Colonel Hawkins continued, encouraged by Maya's silence and the obvious discomfort of witnessing staff officers. Enlisted personnel love to wear equipment that makes them feel connected to operations they could never actually participate in. Makes them imagine they're part of something more significant than routine maintenance duties. The cruelest escalation came when Colonel Hawkins began bringing junior officers specifically to witness her educational sessions with the intellectually limited custodial staff. She would schedule administrative meetings during Maya's work shifts, ensuring maximum audience for her demonstrations of proper military leadership and the importance of maintaining realistic expectations for enlisted personnel with obvious limitations. "Observe carefully," Colonel Hawkins would tell newly assigned personnel. "I'm going to explain basic operational security principles to our cleaning staff. Notice how she pretends to comprehend classified concepts, even though her security clearance and educational background make such understanding impossible." Maya endured detailed lectures about intelligence gathering, threat assessment, mission planning, counterintelligence operations, and advanced tactical coordination. Technologies and methodologies she had employed, improved, and taught to other operators in environments where Colonel Hawkins's theoretical knowledge would have proven fatally inadequate. The systematic humiliation reached its peak when Colonel Hawkins encountered Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a young intelligence officer who was struggling with threat assessment calculations during her lunch break. Maya had been cleaning nearby tables when she noticed Lieutenant Kim's frustration with analytical frameworks that refused to produce coherent results. Maya glanced at the calculations and immediately spotted the error. Lieutenant Kim had been using standard threat probability matrices instead of adjusting for environmental variables and operational complexity factors. Without thinking, Maya reached over and made a small notation in the margin of Lieutenant Kim's notebook, correcting the analytical approach with the precision of someone who had performed similar assessments hundreds of times under operational conditions. "Your baseline threat assessment needs dynamic environmental weighting," Maya said quietly, then seemed to catch herself. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched your papers." Lieutenant Kim stared at the corrected analysis, then worked through the methodology herself. Maya's adjustment was not only accurate, but had solved a problem that Lieutenant Kim had been struggling with for 3 days. The notation was written in the analytical shorthand that advanced intelligence personnel used for rapid threat assessments, using symbols and abbreviations that weren't taught in basic intelligence training courses. "Hey, how did you know that?" Lieutenant Kim asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya's response was carefully neutral, but her eyes showed a flicker of something that made Lieutenant Kim wonder about assumptions she had made regarding custodial staff and their potential backgrounds. "Lucky guess, I should get back to work." But Lieutenant Kim wasn't satisfied with that explanation. She had seen the way Maya's eyes had automatically scanned the entire analytical framework, identifying the methodological error with the instant recognition of someone who had extensive experience with intelligence analysis. The handwriting style, the analytical shorthand, the immediate problem identification, all of it suggested training that ordinary enlisted personnel simply didn't receive in basic military education. Colonel Hawkins witnessed this exchange and immediately transformed it into another opportunity for demonstrating leadership authority and educating junior officers about maintaining proper boundaries with enlisted personnel who had ideas above their actual qualifications. "Lieutenant Kim," Colonel Hawkins announced loudly enough for everyone in the administrative area to hear, "I hope you understand that accepting advice from custodial staff about intelligence analysis represents a serious lapse in professional judgment. Enlisted personnel in support roles often think they understand complex military concepts because they've overheard conversations or watched training videos." She turned to Maya with the expression of someone delivering crucial instruction about military hierarchy and the importance of recognizing intellectual limitations. "Rodriguez, I appreciate your enthusiasm for helping, but intelligence analysis requires educational background and professional training that frankly exceed your qualifications. Stick to cleaning duties and leave analytical work to personnel who actually understand what they're doing." The daily humiliation became routine, with Colonel Hawkins arriving each morning with new opportunities to demonstrate Maya's supposed inadequacy and showcase her own superior knowledge to whoever happened to be available as witnesses. Maya absorbed it all with the stoic endurance she had learned during survival training, during resistance exercises designed to test psychological resilience, during missions where maintaining operational cover was more important than personal dignity or professional recognition. Because Maya understood something that Colonel Hawkins had never learned during her comfortable garrison career. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from allowing others to underestimate your capabilities. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who appears completely harmless. And sometimes the quiet soldier cleaning your office knows more about your specialty than you will ever learn in your entire military career. But Maya also understood that her current assignment served purposes beyond personal comfort or professional recognition. She was positioned where she could monitor base security, observe personnel behavior, and maintain readiness for missions that might require capabilities far beyond routine administrative support. Her role required patience, discretion, and the ability to endure treatment that would have broken soldiers who hadn't been forged in environments where psychological resilience meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The systematic cruelty continued through weeks of calculated humiliation, professional dismissal, and educational demonstrations that used Maya as a convenient example of enlisted limitations. Colonel Hawkins had created a pattern of behavior that satisfied her need for authority while providing entertainment for witnesses who either participated in the cruelty or remained silent rather than challenge their superior's conduct. But Maya Rodriguez had survived worse treatment in actual combat zones, endured interrogation techniques designed by professionals who understood psychological warfare far better than garrison officers playing leadership games. She had maintained operational security under circumstances that would have destroyed most people, protected classified information through experiences that Colonel Hawkins couldn't imagine, and completed missions that required mental toughness far beyond anything these administrative personnel had ever faced. The storm Colonel Hawkins was creating with her systematic psychological abuse was about to encounter a force of nature she couldn't possibly comprehend. And when that collision finally occurred, the colonel would discover that some soldiers' true capabilities remain hidden until the moment when revealing them becomes absolutely necessary for protecting everything they had sworn to defend. The systematic humiliation intensified on Thursday morning when Colonel Hawkins arrived, with a delegation of visiting officers from different installations who had come to observe what she described as innovative leadership development techniques and effective enlisted personnel management strategies. She had apparently decided that Maya's presence provided the perfect opportunity to demonstrate advanced military leadership principles while educating junior officers about maintaining appropriate hierarchical boundaries and realistic performance expectations. "Rodriguez," Colonel Hawkins called out with deliberate authority as Maya entered the main conference room to perform routine cleaning duties, her voice projecting across the entire administrative area to ensure maximum audience participation. "I want these visiting officers to observe proper techniques for addressing performance deficiencies while maintaining military discipline and appropriate command presence." Maya paused in her cleaning routine and turned toward the assembled group with the respectful military bearing she had maintained throughout months of similar encounters. Despite the increasingly personal nature of Colonel Hawkins's public criticism sessions and educational demonstrations. "Yes, ma'am, how can I assist with your training requirements?" Colonel Hawkins gestured toward the visiting officers with the confident authority of someone who had never questioned her right to use subordinate personnel for whatever purposes served her professional development goals and leadership training objectives. "Gentlemen, what you're about to witness is a practical demonstration of how to address intellectual limitations while maintaining realistic expectations for enlisted personnel who lack the educational background and mental capacity required for demanding military responsibilities." Captain Maria Gonzalez from Fort Hood shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her body language suggesting recognition that she was witnessing something unprofessional, but military protocol prevented visiting officers from challenging their host's conduct, even when that conduct clearly violated basic standards of military courtesy and respect for enlisted personnel. Furthermore, Colonel Hawkins continued, warming to her demonstration of leadership expertise, "I've documented numerous instances where this particular soldier has attempted to insert herself into conversations involving technical subjects that are completely beyond her comprehension level. Yesterday, she actually tried to offer suggestions about intelligence analysis to personnel with advanced degrees and specialized training." She turned to Maya with the expression of someone delivering essential military education about recognizing personal limitations and maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. "Rodriguez, I want you to understand something fundamental about military service and intellectual honesty. When officers with college education and advanced military training are discussing complex subjects, it's inappropriate for enlisted personnel with limited educational backgrounds to pretend they understand concepts that require years of specialized study." Maya maintained her neutral expression while Colonel Hawkins delivered what was obviously a prepared lecture about intellectual humility, professional competence, and the importance of recognizing that not all military personnel possess the mental capacity required for demanding analytical work or leadership responsibilities. Major Thomas Reed from Fort Leavenworth attempted diplomatic intervention, his uncomfortable expression indicating awareness that he was witnessing inappropriate use of enlisted personnel for leadership training purposes. "Ma'am, perhaps we could focus on administrative efficiency metrics rather than individual personnel development issues." Colonel Hawkins dismissed his suggestion with the confidence of someone who had convinced herself that public humiliation represented effective leadership training and character development for both the target and the witnesses. "Major Reed, this is exactly the kind of practical leadership experience that visiting officers need to observe. Understanding how to address performance limitations while maintaining appropriate expectations is essential for effective military command." The psychological warfare escalated when Colonel Hawkins began using Maya's presence to deliver extended lectures about military hierarchy, intellectual requirements for different military occupational specialties, and the importance of maintaining realistic career expectations for enlisted personnel who demonstrated obvious limitations in analytical thinking and professional competence. "Hiwi. Watch her facial expression," Colonel Hawkins instructed the visiting officers while pointing directly at Maya. "Notice how she nods and appears to listen attentively, even though the concepts we're discussing are completely beyond her educational level and professional experience. This is typical behavior from support personnel who want to appear more competent than their actual qualifications justify." Maya continued her cleaning duties while enduring detailed explanations of strategic planning principles, resource allocation methodologies, personnel management theories, and operational coordination techniques. Information she had applied at levels of complexity and operational responsibility that Colonel Hawkins had never approached, in environments where theoretical knowledge from classroom instruction wasn't sufficient for mission success or personnel survival. But Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, assigned to custodial duties, wasn't supposed to know anything about advanced military operations, strategic planning, or operational coordination under combat conditions. So she maintained appropriate military courtesy, demonstrated respectful attention to superior officers, and continued performing her assigned cleaning duties while people who had no understanding of her actual qualifications used her as a convenient target for demonstrating their supposed intellectual and professional superiority. The cruelest escalation occurred when Colonel Hawkins discovered that Maya had been quietly helping other enlisted personnel with various administrative and technical problems during her off-duty hours. Maya had assisted a young soldier with understanding military regulations, helped another with financial planning calculations, and provided guidance to a third who was struggling with professional development requirements. This represents exactly the kind of inappropriate behavior that demonstrates why certain enlisted personnel require constant supervision, Colonel Hawkins announced to her assembled audience of visiting officers and administrative staff. Rodriguez has been attempting to provide advice and assistance in areas that exceed her qualifications, creating potential problems and confusion for personnel who should be receiving guidance from properly trained and educated military professionals. She turned to Maya with the expression of someone delivering crucial instruction about professional boundaries and the dangers of exceeding one's actual capabilities. "Rodriguez helping other soldiers might seem like positive behavior, but when you lack the educational background and professional training to provide accurate guidance, your well-intentioned assistance can actually cause more problems than it solves." The systematic humiliation reached new levels when Colonel Hawkins began scheduling what she called educational sessions during Maya's work shifts, bringing in personnel specifically to witness demonstrations of proper military leadership and the importance of maintaining appropriate expectations for different categories of enlisted personnel. "Observe carefully," Colonel Hawkins would announce to newly assigned administrative personnel and visiting officers. "I'm going to explain advanced military decision-making processes to our custodial staff. Notice how she appears to understand complex concepts, even though her educational background and security clearance makes such comprehension impossible." Maya endured lengthy lectures about intelligence gathering techniques, threat assessment methodologies, operational planning principles, counterintelligence operations, and advanced tactical coordination strategies. Technologies and operational concepts she had employed, refined, and taught to other operators in classified environments where Colonel Hawkins's theoretical knowledge would have proven inadequate for mission success or personnel survival. The psychological abuse intensified when Colonel Hawkins began bringing technical manuals and classified documents to her educational demonstrations, using them as props to illustrate the intellectual gap between trained military professionals and enlisted personnel who lacked the educational foundation necessary for understanding complex military concepts. These are advanced operational procedures, Colonel Hawkins would explain while displaying documents that Maya had helped develop during classified assignments. I don't expect custodial personnel to comprehend the technical details, but perhaps exposure to professional military documentation will help you appreciate the intellectual demands required for real military responsibilities. Watch her facial expression, Colonel Hawkins instructed the visiting officers while pointing directly at Maya. Notice how she nods and appears to listen attentively, even though the concepts we're discussing are completely beyond her educational level and professional experience. This is typical behavior from support personnel who want to appear more competent than their actual qualifications justify. Maya continued her cleaning duties while enduring detailed explanations of strategic planning principles, resource allocation methodologies, personnel management theories, and operational coordination techniques. Information she had applied at levels of complexity and operational responsibility that Colonel Hawkins had never approached, in environments where theoretical knowledge from classroom instruction wasn't sufficient for mission success or personnel survival. But Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, assigned to custodial duties, wasn't supposed to know anything about advanced military operations, strategic planning, or operational coordination under combat conditions. So she maintained appropriate military courtesy, demonstrated respectful attention to superior officers, and continued performing her assigned cleaning duties while people who had no understanding of her actual qualifications used her as a convenient target for demonstrating their supposed intellectual and professional superiority. The cruelest escalation occurred when Colonel Hawkins discovered that Maya had been quietly helping other enlisted personnel with various administrative and technical problems during her off-duty hours. Maya had assisted a young soldier with understanding military regulations, helped another with financial planning calculations, and provided guidance to a third who was struggling with professional development requirements. This represents exactly the kind of inappropriate behavior that demonstrates why certain enlisted personnel require constant supervision, Colonel Hawkins announced to her assembled audience of visiting officers and administrative staff. Rodriguez has been attempting to provide advice and assistance in areas that exceed her qualifications, creating potential problems and confusion for personnel who should be receiving guidance from properly trained and educated military professionals. She turned to Maya with the expression of someone delivering crucial instruction about professional boundaries and the dangers of exceeding one's actual capabilities. Rodriguez, helping other soldiers might seem like positive behavior, but when you lack the educational background and professional training to provide accurate guidance, your well-intentioned assistance can actually cause more problems than it solves. The systematic humiliation reached new levels when Colonel Hawkins began scheduling what she called, quote, educational sessions during Maya's work shifts, bringing in personnel specifically to witness demonstrations of proper military leadership and the importance of maintaining appropriate expectations for different categories of enlisted personnel. Observe carefully, Colonel Hawkins would announce to newly assigned administrative personnel and visiting officers. I'm going to explain advanced military decision-making processes to our custodial staff. Notice how she appears to understand complex concepts, even though her educational background and security clearance make such comprehension impossible. Maya endured lengthy lectures about intelligence gathering techniques, threat assessment methodologies, operational planning principles, counterintelligence operations, and advanced tactical coordination strategies. Technologies and operational concepts she had employed, refined, and taught to other operators in classified environments where Colonel Hawkins's theoretical knowledge would have proven inadequate for mission success or personnel survival. The psychological abuse intensified when Colonel Hawkins began bringing technical manuals and classified documents to her educational demonstrations, using them as props to illustrate the intellectual gap between trained military professionals and enlisted personnel who lacked the educational foundation necessary for understanding complex military concepts. These are advanced operational procedures, Colonel Hawkins would explain while displaying documents that Maya had helped develop during classified assignments. I don't expect custodial personnel to comprehend the technical details, but perhaps exposure to professional military documentation will help you appreciate the intellectual demands required for real military responsibilities. Maya would nod respectfully and continue her cleaning duties while listening to simplified explanations of operational concepts she had applied under conditions that would have challenged the most experienced military professionals, in environments where classroom theory provided inadequate preparation for practical operational requirements. The most devastating attack came when Colonel Hawkins encountered Specialist Lisa Martinez, a young communications technician who was having difficulty with encryption protocol calculations during her lunch break. Maya had been organizing supplies nearby when she noticed Martinez's frustration with technical procedures that weren't producing expected results. Maya glanced at the communication setup and immediately identified the problem. Martinez had been using standard encryption protocols instead of adjusting for frequency interference and signal degradation factors that affected secure communication reliability. Without thinking, Maya made a small adjustment to the technical configuration, correcting the communication parameters with the precision of someone who had managed secure communications under operational conditions. Your encryption protocol needs frequency compensation for environmental interference, Maya said quietly, then immediately recognized her mistake. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched your equipment. Specialist Martinez stared at the corrected communication setup, then tested the technical configuration herself. Maya's adjustment was not only completely accurate, but had solved a technical problem that Martinez had been struggling with for several days. The modification demonstrated understanding of advanced communication security principles that weren't taught in basic military communication training. "How did you know that technical procedure?" Martinez asked, her voice filled with professional curiosity and growing respect. Maya's response was carefully neutral, but her eyes showed the controlled competence that Captain Santos was learning to recognize as evidence of extensive technical experience. "Lucky guess about communication systems. I should return to my assigned duties." Colonel Hawkins witnessed this exchange and immediately transformed it into her most devastating demonstration of enlisted overreach and the dangers of allowing support personnel to exceed their designated responsibilities and authorized areas of competence. "Specialist Martinez," Colonel Hawkins announced with calculated authority, ensuring maximum audience for her educational demonstration, "I hope you understand that accepting technical assistance from custodial personnel represents a serious breach of communication security protocols and professional military standards." She turned to Maya with an expression of controlled fury, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had decided that this incident provided the perfect opportunity for a definitive lesson about military hierarchy and appropriate limitations for enlisted personnel in support roles. "Rodriguez, what you just did represents exactly the kind of dangerous behavior that demonstrates why certain soldiers require constant supervision and clear boundaries. Communication security is a highly technical field that requires specialized training, security clearances, and professional certification that you simply do not possess." The assembled witnesses watched in uncomfortable silence as Colonel Hawkins delivered what amounted to a public humiliation session disguised as professional military education, her voice rising with each accusation about unauthorized technical assistance and inappropriate interference with classified communication systems. "You will not touch communication equipment again, you will not offer technical advice to qualified military professionals, and you will limit your activities to the custodial duties for which you are actually qualified, rather than pretending to possess expertise that exceeds your educational background and security authorization." Maya absorbed the verbal assault with the stoic endurance she had developed during interrogation resistance training, during survival exercises designed to test psychological resilience under extreme pressure, during missions where maintaining operational cover required accepting treatment that would have broken personnel who hadn't been forged in environments where personal dignity was secondary to mission success. The daily psychological warfare became Colonel Hawkins' signature leadership demonstration, with Maya serving as a convenient example of enlisted limitations and the importance of maintaining realistic expectations for personnel who lacked the intellectual capacity required for demanding military responsibilities. But Maya Rodriguez understood something that Colonel Hawkins would never learn through comfortable garrison assignments and theoretical leadership training. Real military competence wasn't demonstrated through public humiliation of subordinates or educational lectures about hierarchical boundaries. It was proven through actions taken when failure meant consequences that couldn't be corrected through administrative procedures or personnel reassignments. The storm Colonel Hawkins was creating through her systematic psychological abuse was building toward a confrontation that would expose the fundamental difference between theoretical military knowledge and practical operational competence, between classroom leadership training and the kind of professional expertise that was forged in environments where lives depended on capabilities that existed far beyond anything these administrative personnel could imagine. The accumulating evidence of Maya's concealed expertise became impossible to ignore during a routine Friday afternoon when multiple incidents converged to create a pattern that even casual observers couldn't dismiss as coincidence. The administrative building was hosting a complex coordination meeting between intelligence personnel, logistics specialists, and communications technicians, creating an environment where Maya's unconscious competencies began manifesting in ways that defied explanation for someone supposedly limited to custodial responsibilities. While organizing cleaning supplies in the main conference room, Maya overheard Major Patricia Williams discussing problematic coordination failures between different military units during recent training exercises. The communication breakdown had resulted in delayed supply deliveries, confused personnel movements, and inefficient resource allocation that suggested fundamental flaws in current coordination protocols. The synchronization matrix isn't accounting for variable transmission delays across different communication systems, Major Williams was explaining to her assembled staff, frustration evident in her voice as she described technical problems that had plagued multiple training operations. We're experiencing coordination failures that shouldn't be occurring with properly configured communication networks. Maya, who was supposed to be focused entirely on restocking paper towels and cleaning solutions, paused involuntarily when she heard the specific technical terminology. Her head tilted slightly, and her eyes unfocused in the way that experienced operators recognized as someone mentally processing complex technical information and identifying potential solutions to operational problems. Without conscious intention, Maya began unconsciously mapping the described communication network in three-dimensional space, her hands making subtle gestures that mirrored the coordination patterns Major Williams was discussing. Her fingers traced invisible connection points and signal pathways, movements that Captain Santos recognized as the physical manifestation of someone who had actually managed complex multi-unit coordination under operational conditions. The gestures were so natural, so automatic, that Maya seemed unaware she was displaying advanced technical knowledge through unconscious physical responses to professional conversations about subjects that should have been completely outside her educational background and security authorization. Sergeant First Class David Park, who had been observing Maya's movements with growing professional curiosity, noticed that her unconscious coordination mapping aligned perfectly with the communication network problems Major Williams was describing. Maya's physical gestures suggested solutions to technical issues that the assembled communication specialists hadn't yet identified, demonstrating understanding of coordination principles that exceeded standard military training. When Major Williams moved to a whiteboard to diagram the problematic communication network, Maya automatically positioned herself where she could observe the technical drawings while maintaining the appearance of routine cleaning activities. Her eyes tracked across the network diagram with the fluid comprehension of someone reading familiar technical information, and her expression showed the focused concentration of a professional evaluating operational specifications rather than someone encountering unfamiliar concepts. The most revealing moment occurred when Major Williams made an error in her network diagram, incorrectly connecting two communication nodes in a way that would have created signal interference and coordination delays. Maya's eyes immediately identified the mistake, and she took an unconscious half-step toward the whiteboard before catching herself and returning to her cleaning routine. But Captain Santos had observed the entire sequence. Maya's instant recognition of the technical error, her automatic movement to correct the mistake, and her disciplined self-control when she realized she was about to expose knowledge that exceeded her supposed qualifications. The behavior pattern suggested someone with extensive experience in communication network coordination who was consciously suppressing professional instincts. The evidence accumulated when Dr. Jennifer Chang, a civilian contractor specializing in advanced encryption methodologies, arrived for a consultation about securing communication networks against increasingly sophisticated interception techniques employed by hostile intelligence services. Her discussion involved technical concepts that were classified at levels requiring specialized security clearances and years of practical experience with counterintelligence operations. The frequency-hopping algorithms are being defeated by adaptive listening systems that can predict pattern variations, Dr. Chang explained to the assembled military personnel, her presentation involving mathematical concepts and technical procedures that were beyond standard military communication training. We need encryption methodologies that can maintain security against artificial intelligence systems specifically designed to break traditional encryption patterns. Maya, who was organizing supply cabinets near the conference area, found herself unconsciously analyzing the encryption problems Dr. Chang was describing. Her mental processes automatically began evaluating potential countermeasures and alternative methodologies, drawing on experience with communication security that existed far beyond anything these personnel realized. When Dr. Chang displayed technical diagrams showing how current encryption methods were being compromised, Maya's eyes moved across the visual information with immediate comprehension. Her expression showed the recognition of someone who had encountered similar technical challenges and developed practical solutions through operational application rather than theoretical study. The most damaging revelation occurred when Dr. Chang described a specific type of counterintelligence technique that involved analyzing communication patterns to identify high-value targets and operational relationships between different military units. Maya's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her posture straightened, her awareness sharpened, and her eyes began automatically scanning the room for potential security threats. The response lasted only seconds, but Captain Santos recognized it as the hypervigilant state that experienced operators developed when confronted with information about hostile surveillance techniques. Maya had reacted like someone who understood the practical implications of the counterintelligence methods Dr. Chang was describing, someone who had personal experience with the operational security challenges involved in protecting classified communication networks. Staff Sergeant Monica Torres, who had been watching Maya with increasing suspicion, noticed something even more significant. When Dr. Chang mentioned specific geographic regions where advanced counterintelligence operations had been detected, Maya's eyes automatically tracked toward those locations on the conference room's world map. Her gaze lingered on areas that corresponded exactly with the operational zones Dr. Chang was discussing, suggesting familiarity with geographic regions that ordinary enlisted personnel wouldn't recognize. The pattern of unconscious knowledge continued when Lieutenant Colonel James Russell arrived with classified briefing materials about recent security incidents involving attempted penetration of military communication networks by foreign intelligence services. His presentation included technical details about sophisticated interception techniques and the specific countermeasures that had been employed to protect classified information. Maya, who was supposed to be focused on routine custodial duties, found herself automatically cataloging the security procedures Lieutenant Colonel Russell was describing. Her mental processes began analyzing the effectiveness of different countermeasures and identifying potential vulnerabilities that the briefing materials hadn't addressed. When Lieutenant Colonel Russell displayed photographs of equipment that had been used in attempted penetration operations, Maya's eyes immediately identified technical specifications and operational capabilities that weren't obvious to the assembled personnel. Her expression showed the analytical focus of someone who had encountered similar equipment and understood its practical applications for intelligence-gathering operations. The most revealing moment came when Lieutenant Colonel Russell mentioned a specific incident involving compromise of a classified communication network in a geographic region that wasn't identified in his presentation. Maya's reaction was instantaneous. Her breathing pattern changed, her muscle tension increased, and her eyes showed the focused alertness of someone who recognized the operational reference and understood its significance. Captain Santos realized that Maya had just demonstrated knowledge of a classified security incident that wasn't included in Lieutenant Colonel Russell's briefing materials. Her reaction suggested personal familiarity with operational details that wouldn't be available to personnel outside of specialized intelligence operations, information that required security clearances far beyond anything associated with custodial assignments. The accumulating evidence created an undeniable pattern when Master Sergeant Robert Kim arrived with technical equipment for testing new communication security protocols. His demonstration involved advanced procedures for detecting and countering hostile surveillance techniques, methodologies that were still in experimental phases at most military installations. Maya, who was cleaning equipment in the adjacent area, unconsciously began evaluating the technical procedures Master Sergeant Kim was demonstrating. Her eyes tracked across the equipment configurations with immediate comprehension, and her posture automatically adjusted to accommodate the analytical focus required for assessing complex technical systems. When Master Sergeant Kim encountered technical difficulties with the equipment configuration, Maya took an unconscious step toward the demonstration area before forcing herself to return to her cleaning duties. But Captain Santos had observed her automatic response to technical problems. the instinctive movement of someone who understood the equipment and knew how to resolve the operational difficulties. The most damaging revelation occurred when Master Sergeant Kim mentioned that the communication security procedures had been developed through collaborative research with personnel who had extensive operational experience in hostile environments. Maya's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. She touched the concealed pendant beneath her uniform shirt, a gesture that suggested personal connection to the operational background Master Sergeant Kim was describing. Specialist Amanda White, who had been observing Maya throughout the technical demonstration, noticed that Maya's responses to the communication security procedures suggested familiarity with operational environments and practical challenges that exceeded standard military training. Her body language indicated someone who had personal experience with the security requirements Master Sergeant Kim was discussing, rather than someone encountering unfamiliar technical concepts. The pattern became undeniable when Maya unconsciously corrected her posture during Master Sergeant Kim's discussion of surveillance detection techniques. Her stance automatically shifted to accommodate the scanning patterns and awareness requirements that experienced operators used in hostile environments, physical responses that could only be acquired through extensive practical training and operational experience. Captain Santos realized that Maya Rodriguez, the soldier assigned to custodial duties, was unconsciously demonstrating expertise in communication security, counterintelligence operations, and surveillance detection techniques that exceeded the qualifications of most active-duty intelligence personnel. Her responses suggested training and operational experience that existed far beyond anything associated with routine enlisted assignments or standard military education. The question was no longer whether Maya possessed advanced military qualifications. The question was, what kind of operational background could produce the level of specialized knowledge she was unconsciously revealing, and why someone with her apparent expertise was concealing her true capabilities behind the identity of a routine custodial worker in an administrative facility. The evidence suggested that Maya Rodriguez might be someone whose actual military background was so classified that even her current assignment served purposes that weren't reflected in any official personnel records. Someone whose operational experience exceeded anything these administrative personnel could imagine. The crisis erupted on Monday morning with an emergency alert that transformed Building 1444 from a routine administrative facility into a command center for what would become the most serious security breach in the installation's history. The piercing sound of the base-wide alarm system cut through the normal morning routine at precisely 0647 hours, followed immediately by announcements that sent every available security team racing toward multiple locations across Fort Carson. All personnel, the base communication system crackled with urgent authority. Security Alert Condition Delta is now in effect. Multiple unauthorized intrusions detected at classified facilities. All non-essential personnel report to designated secure areas immediately. This is not a drill. Maya was restocking supply cabinets in the main conference room when the alerts began, but her reaction was immediate and professional. Her posture straightened into combat readiness. Her awareness expanded to encompass every potential threat in the building, and her eyes began automatically calculating escape routes and defensive positions, with the unconscious precision of someone whose survival had once depended on such assessments. Colonel Hawkins rushed into the administrative area with her secure communication device already active, her face showing the controlled tension of someone receiving catastrophic information from multiple sources simultaneously. Behind her, a stream of security personnel, intelligence officers, and emergency response teams filled the building with the organized chaos of a major security incident. "Ma'am, we have confirmed breaches at 3 separate classified facilities," Major Walsh reported with the crisp efficiency of someone delivering critical information under extreme pressure. "Unknown personnel have accessed sensitive areas at the Intelligence Processing Center, the Communication Security Facility, and the Advanced Technology Research Laboratory." Maya continued her cleaning routine while absorbing every detail of the unfolding crisis, her trained mind automatically analyzing the security implications of coordinated attacks against multiple high-value targets. The pattern suggested sophisticated planning, detailed intelligence gathering, and operational capabilities that exceeded typical criminal activity or random security violations. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Morrison arrived with additional personnel and immediately began establishing a command center in the main conference room, her movements showing the professional competence of someone experienced in managing complex security operations under pressure. Colonel Hawkins, we need immediate assessment of potential intelligence compromise and evaluation of ongoing threat levels. The security briefing that followed revealed the scope of a crisis that threatened fundamental military operations across the entire installation. Maya listened while maintaining her invisible custodial presence, her extensive operational experience allowing her to understand implications that the assembled personnel were still processing. The intrusions were coordinated across multiple time zones, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison explained to the assembled command staff. Someone with detailed knowledge of our security protocols and facility layouts managed to penetrate classified areas simultaneously, accessing information systems that should have been impossible to compromise. Maya's hands paused momentarily on the supply cabinet she was organizing, her professional instincts recognizing the operational signature of advanced intelligence operations that required capabilities far beyond typical security threats. The coordination, timing, facility selection, and technical sophistication suggested foreign intelligence services with extensive resources and detailed targeting information. Captain Santos, who had been observing Maya's reactions throughout the developing crisis, noticed that her body language indicated someone who understood the operational implications of what Lieutenant Colonel Morrison was describing. Maya's posture showed the controlled alertness of an experienced operator evaluating threat levels and potential countermeasures, rather than someone simply witnessing unfamiliar security procedures. Sir, our current security teams are reporting that the intrusion techniques exceeded our defensive capabilities, Major Chen reported with visible frustration. The hostile personnel used methods that bypassed our detection systems and neutralized our countermeasures with precision that suggests insider knowledge of our security protocols. Maya's expression showed the focused concentration of someone analyzing tactical problems and identifying potential solutions, her extensive experience with security operations allowing her to process information that confused the assembled administrative personnel. Her eyes tracked across the facility diagrams with immediate comprehension of operational challenges and defensive requirements. The most revealing moment came when Dr. Elizabeth Parker, the installation's senior intelligence analyst, arrived with preliminary assessment of the security breaches. Her analysis included technical details about the intrusion methods and operational capabilities that had been employed against classified facilities. The hostile personnel demonstrated expertise in counter-surveillance techniques, electronic warfare, and physical security penetration that exceeds anything in our current threat assessment database, Dr. Parker reported with professional concern. We're facing opponents who possess training and equipment that suggest state-level intelligence operations. Maya's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her breathing pattern shifted to the controlled respiration that experienced operators use during threat assessment. Her muscle tension increased to combat readiness levels, and her awareness expanded to encompass every person and potential threat in the immediate environment. Captain Santos realized that Maya was responding like someone who had personal experience with the operational techniques Dr. Parker was describing, someone who understood the practical implications of facing adversaries with advanced intelligence capabilities and sophisticated operational training. The crisis escalated when Brigadier General Michael Thompson arrived to assume direct command of the security response, his presence indicating that the situation had exceeded normal base-level authority and required intervention from higher command levels. His briefing revealed additional information that transformed the security breach from a local incident into a threat with national implications. The facilities that were compromised contain research and development projects that represent decades of classified military advancement, General Thompson announced to the assembled personnel. If the accessed information reaches hostile intelligence services, it could compromise American military superiority across multiple operational domains. Maya's eyes automatically tracked toward the specific facilities General Thompson was discussing, her expression showing the immediate recognition of someone who understood the operational significance of the targeted locations. Her professional knowledge allowed her to assess the strategic implications of information compromise at levels that exceeded the understanding of most assembled personnel. The most damaging revelation came when General Thompson described the specific capabilities that the hostile personnel had demonstrated during their penetration operations. These intrusions required expertise in advanced surveillance detection, electronic countermeasures, and operational security that suggest training equivalent to our most elite military units. Maya's hand unconsciously moved toward the concealed pendant beneath her uniform shirt, a gesture that Captain Santos recognized as evidence of personal connection to the operational background General Thompson was describing. Her body language indicated someone who understood the training requirements and operational experience necessary for the capabilities being discussed. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh, who had been monitoring communication intercepts related to the security breaches, provided additional information that made Maya's concealed expertise even more relevant to the developing crisis. "Sir, we've detected communication signatures that suggest the hostile personnel are using advanced encryption methods and operational coordination techniques that exceed our current countermeasure capabilities." Maya's reaction was instantaneous and professional. Her posture shifted to the analytical stance that experienced operators adopted when processing complex technical information, and her eyes began tracking communication equipment with the automatic awareness of someone who understood advanced encryption methodologies and counterintelligence operations. The pattern of unconscious expertise continued when Master Sergeant David Lee arrived with technical equipment for analyzing the security breach evidence. His demonstration of forensic techniques and operational assessment procedures triggered additional responses from Maya that indicated familiarity with investigative methodologies that weren't included in standard military training. When Master Sergeant Lee displayed photographs of equipment that had been recovered from the penetration sites, Maya's eyes immediately identified technical specifications and operational capabilities that weren't obvious to other personnel. Her expression showed the analytical focus of someone who had encountered similar equipment and understood its practical applications for intelligence operations. The most significant revelation occurred when Master Sergeant Lee mentioned that the security penetration techniques showed similarities to operational methods that had been documented in previous incidents involving highly trained personnel with specialized backgrounds in covert operations and intelligence gathering. Maya's breathing pattern changed immediately, her muscle tension increased to combat alertness levels, and her awareness expanded to tactical scanning of the immediate environment. Captain Santos realized that Maya was responding like someone who recognized the operational signature Master Sergeant Lee was describing, someone with personal experience in the specialized operations being discussed. The crisis reached critical levels when Colonel Richard Hayes from the Criminal Investigation Division arrived with classified information about the security breach that transformed the incident from a local security problem into a national security emergency requiring immediate response from personnel with capabilities that existed beyond normal military training. The evidence suggests that we're dealing with a coordinated intelligence operation that required months of planning, detailed reconnaissance, and operational expertise that exceeds anything we've encountered in previous security incidents, Colonel Hayes announced to the assembled command staff. Maya's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her entire demeanor shifted from invisible custodial worker to hypervigilant operator, her awareness expanding to encompass every potential threat and escape route in the immediate environment. Her body language indicated someone who understood the operational implications of coordinated intelligence operations and possessed experience with countermeasures that these administrative personnel couldn't imagine. The accumulating evidence created an undeniable pattern that suggested Maya Rodriguez possessed operational experience and specialized training that could be crucial for resolving the security crisis. Her unconscious responses indicated knowledge of advanced intelligence operations, counter-surveillance techniques, and security methodologies that exceeded the qualifications of most active duty personnel. Captain Santos realized that the quiet soldier assigned to custodial duties might be the only person in the building who possessed the expertise necessary to understand and counter the sophisticated threat that was overwhelming the installation's normal security capabilities. The question was whether Maya would reveal her true qualifications when the situation demanded capabilities that existed far beyond conventional military training. The crisis was escalating beyond the ability of normal security personnel to manage, and Maya Rodriguez was unconsciously demonstrating that she might be exactly the kind of operator who could provide solutions that conventional approaches couldn't achieve. The moment was approaching when her concealed expertise would become more important than maintaining her invisible cover identity. The authentication process that followed Maya's revelation moved with the lightning efficiency of military systems designed to verify impossible claims under extreme pressure. General Thompson's hands moved across his secure tablet with practiced precision while Maya stood at attention, her transformation from invisible custodial worker to elite operator now complete and irreversible before an audience that struggled to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Authorization code Delta 77 Charlie Alpha Romeo, Maya stated with the crisp precision of someone who had memorized classified protocols that existed beyond normal military security procedures. Current authentication cycle Tango 49. Biometric verification enabled. Operational status classified beyond standard clearance levels. The secure authentication system processed Maya's credentials through classification levels that most of the assembled personnel had never encountered, accessing databases that contained information about operations and personnel whose existence was compartmentalized beyond normal military knowledge. The verification process took 43 seconds that felt like hours to everyone watching. When the results appeared on General Thompson's screen, his expression shifted from desperate hope to absolute shock as he read information that redefined everything he thought he knew about personnel assignments and operational security. Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, call sign Shadow Knife, Delta Force Advanced Operations Division, he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Security clearance Ultra Black with Special Access Program Authorization, Operational Status Deep Cover Assignment, presumed killed in action during classified operations 18 months ago. Eyeball. The most significant revelation occurred when Master Sergeant Lee mentioned that the security penetration techniques showed similarities to operational methods that had been documented in previous incidents involving highly trained personnel with specialized backgrounds in covert operations and intelligence gathering. Maya's breathing pattern changed immediately. Her muscle tension increased to combat alertness levels, and her awareness expanded to tactical scanning of the immediate environment. Captain Santos realized that Maya was responding like someone who recognized the operational signature Master Sergeant Lee was describing, someone with personal experience in the specialized operations being discussed. The crisis reached critical levels when Colonel Richard Hayes, from the Criminal Investigation Division, arrived with classified information about the security breach that transformed the incident from a local security problem into a national security emergency requiring immediate response from personnel, with capabilities that existed beyond normal military training. The evidence suggests that we're dealing with a coordinated intelligence operation that required months of planning, detailed reconnaissance, and operational expertise that exceeds anything we've encountered in previous security incidents, Colonel Hayes announced to the assembled command staff. Maya's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her entire demeanor shifted from invisible custodial worker to hypervigilant operator, her awareness expanding to encompass every potential threat and escape route in the immediate environment. Her body language indicated someone who understood the operational implications of coordinated intelligence operations and possessed experience with countermeasures that these administrative personnel couldn't imagine. The accumulating evidence created an undeniable pattern that suggested Maya Rodriguez possessed operational experience and specialized training that could be crucial for resolving the security crisis. Her unconscious responses indicated knowledge of advanced intelligence operations, counter-surveillance techniques, and security methodologies that exceeded the qualifications of most active duty personnel. Captain Santos realized that the quiet soldier assigned to custodial duties might be the only person in the building who possessed the expertise necessary to understand and counter the sophisticated threat that was overwhelming the installation's normal security capabilities. The question was whether Maya would reveal her true qualifications when the situation demanded capabilities that existed far beyond conventional military training. The crisis was escalating beyond the ability of normal security personnel to manage, and Maya Rodriguez was unconsciously demonstrating that she might be exactly the kind of operator who could provide solutions that conventional approaches couldn't achieve. The moment was approaching when her concealed expertise would become more important than maintaining her invisible cover identity. The authentication process that followed Maya's revelation moved with the lightning efficiency of military systems designed to verify impossible claims under extreme pressure. General Thompson's hands moved across his secure tablet with practiced precision while Maya stood at attention, her transformation from invisible custodial worker to elite operator now complete and irreversible before an audience that struggled to process the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Authorization code Delta 77 Charlie Alpha Romeo, Maya stated with the crisp precision of someone who had memorized classified protocols that existed beyond normal military security procedures. Current authentication cycle Tango 49. Biometric verification enabled. Operational status classified beyond standard clearance levels. The secure authentication system processed Maya's credentials through classification levels that most of the assembled personnel had never encountered, accessing databases that contained information about operations and personnel whose existence was compartmentalized beyond normal military knowledge. The verification process took 43 seconds that felt like hours to everyone watching. When the results appeared on General Thompson's screen, His expression shifted from desperate hope to absolute shock as he read information that redefined everything he thought he knew about personnel assignments and operational security. Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, call sign Shadow Knife, Delta Force Advanced Operations Division, he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Security clearance Ultra Black with Special Access Program Authorization, Operational Status Deep Cover Assignment, presumed killed in action during classified operations 18 months ago. Eyeball. Maya's smile was the expression of someone who had operated beyond conventional limitations for years before accepting assignment that required complete invisibility and professional sacrifice. Captain Santos, the operational methods I'm about to employ were developed during missions that don't appear in any official records, using equipment that officially doesn't exist, in coordination with personnel whose identities remain classified beyond normal acknowledgement. She moved toward the exit with purposeful stride that indicated preparation for combat operations, her transformation from invisible custodial worker to elite operator now witnessed by administrative personnel who would never again make assumptions about military capabilities based on apparent assignments or hierarchical positions. General Thompson's communication device provided real-time updates that made Maya's intervention even more critical. Sir, the hostile personnel have neutralized our remaining security teams using techniques that suggest training equivalent to Special Operations Forces. They're employing tactical coordination and equipment that exceeds our current defensive capabilities. Maya paused at the building exit to address the assembled officers who had spent months witnessing her systematic humiliation without understanding that they were watching someone whose operational experience exceeded their collective qualifications. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to witness capabilities that were developed during operations that officially never occurred, employed by personnel who are supposed to be dead, using methods that challenge conventional understanding of military possibilities. The equipment locker Maya accessed contained gear that defied normal military inventory standards. Advanced communications equipment, tactical weapons systems, and operational tools that existed beyond standard military procurement appeared as Maya prepared for engagement with adversaries whose capabilities had overwhelmed conventional security forces. Her movements while assembling tactical equipment revealed training that existed far beyond standard military education. Maya handled advanced weapon systems with unconscious familiarity, configured communication equipment with automatic precision, and prepared countermeasures with the fluid efficiency of someone who had employed similar gear under operational conditions. The tactical coordination that followed demonstrated why Delta Force personnel were considered legendary even among special operations communities. Maya's communication with remaining security forces revealed command capabilities that transformed confused defensive operations into coordinated tactical responses against sophisticated adversaries. All security teams, this is Shadow Knife assuming tactical command, Maya transmitted on encrypted frequencies while moving toward the advanced research facility. Hostile personnel are employing infiltration techniques developed during classified operations. Standard countermeasures are ineffective. Implementing Advanced Protocol Delta with authorization Ultra Black 77. The response from security teams indicated recognition of authority that exceeded normal base-level command structures. Maya's tactical coordination transformed individual security personnel into coordinated operational units capable of supporting advanced countermeasures against adversaries whose capabilities had previously overwhelmed defensive efforts. Her approach to the advanced research facility employed movement techniques that existed beyond standard military training. Maya navigated facility approaches using surveillance countermeasures and tactical positioning that rendered her invisible to detection systems while maintaining perfect awareness of hostile personnel locations and operational activities. The confrontation that followed would demonstrate why certain operational capabilities remained classified beyond normal military acknowledgement. Maya's engagement with hostile personnel employed techniques that existed at the intersection of advanced tactical training and practical experience gained through missions that challenged conventional understanding of military possibilities. The hostile personnel discovered that their sophisticated infiltration techniques and advanced countermeasures were ineffective against an opponent who had helped develop the operational methods they were employing. Maya's tactical responses demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their training and equipment, revealing why Delta Force operators were considered apex predators even among elite military units. The engagement lasted 14 minutes and concluded with the neutralization of all hostile personnel, the secure recovery of Project Nightfall database systems, and the protection of classified information that represented decades of American intelligence development. Maya had not only prevented catastrophic intelligence compromise, but had captured hostile personnel whose interrogation would provide crucial information about foreign intelligence operations. Her return to Building 1444 brought an operator whose capabilities had been proven under conditions that validated every impossible claim about her background and training. The quiet custodial worker was gone forever, replaced by someone whose professional competence commanded respect from personnel, who finally understood the extraordinary nature of the soldier they had systematically underestimated. The impossible had become reality, witnessed by administrative personnel who would never again assume they understood someone's complete capabilities based on apparent assignments or hierarchical positions. Maya Rodriguez had revealed why certain legends exist in classified databases rather than public recognition, demonstrating that heroes sometimes hide in the most ordinary places until extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary responses. The aftermath of Maya's impossible victory created a silence in Building 1444 that stretched across minutes filled with the weight of revelations that would reshape every assumption the assembled personnel had ever made about military service, operational capabilities, and the extraordinary people who sometimes hide behind the most ordinary assignments. General Thompson stood beside the secure communication terminal, reading after-action reports that documented tactical achievements beyond conventional military possibilities. All hostile personnel neutralized without casualties to American forces, General Thompson announced to the assembled officers, his voice carrying the awe of someone who had witnessed operational excellence that exceeded theoretical limitations. Project Nightfall database secured with no compromise of classified information. Hostile equipment captured intact for intelligence analysis. Mission completion time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds. Maya entered the administrative area with the calm composure of someone returning from routine assignment, rather than from combat operations that had prevented national security catastrophe. Her tactical equipment had been secured, her weapons properly cleared, and her operational gear returned to classification levels that officially didn't exist. But her bearing still radiated the professional competence that had been hidden beneath months of enforced humility. Colonel Hawkins approached Maya with the expression of someone whose entire understanding of military hierarchy and professional competence had been shattered by witnessing capabilities that challenged every assumption she had made about enlisted personnel and intellectual limitations. Her face showed the particular kind of devastation that comes from realizing the magnitude of systematic cruelty directed at someone whose accomplishments exceeded her most ambitious career goals. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Colonel Hawkins began, her voice barely above a whisper as she struggled to find words adequate for apologizing to someone whose operational achievements represented everything she had claimed to value about military excellence. What I said to you, what I did to you over these months. I was humiliating someone whose forgotten accomplishments exceed anything I'll ever achieve in my entire career. Maya's response demonstrated the gracious professionalism that had characterized her behavior even during the worst of Colonel Hawkins's systematic psychological abuse. Colonel Hawkins, respect isn't earned through rank recognition or public acknowledgement. It's earned through actions, through competence under pressure, through caring more about mission success than personal recognition or professional advancement. She paused, looking around at the assembled officers, who had witnessed the impossible transformation from invisible custodial worker to elite operator, whose capabilities existed beyond their understanding of military possibilities. Today you learned that expertise comes from experience rather than titles, that heroes don't always announce themselves with fanfare and recognition, and that the quiet person cleaning your office might be someone who once saved your entire country from threats you never knew existed. Captain Santos, whose growing suspicions had been validated in ways that exceeded his wildest speculation about Maya's background, approached with the professional respect of someone who finally understood the true nature of the soldier he had been observing for months. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your operational security was perfect. Even when I suspected something unusual about your background, I never imagined capabilities at this level. Maya's smile carried the satisfaction of someone who had maintained classified identity under conditions that would have broken most military personnel, enduring systematic humiliation while protecting secrets that could reshape global military balance if they became public knowledge. Captain Santos, operational security requires accepting treatment that challenges personal dignity while maintaining mission focus. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption is thinking you know someone's complete story based only on what you can see. Dr. Mitchell approached with scientific fascination, mixed with professional admiration for operational capabilities that existed beyond her understanding of special operations training and practical application. Staff Sergeant, the tactical methods you employed against hostile personnel, those techniques aren't documented in any training manuals or operational literature that I've encountered. Maya's response revealed the classified nature of training that existed beyond normal military education and professional development programs. Dr. Mitchell, the operational methods I employed were developed during missions that don't appear in official records, using training that can't be acknowledged through normal channels, in coordination with personnel whose identities remain classified beyond standard recognition. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, whose emergency response coordination had been transformed from inevitable failure into mission success through Maya's intervention, asked the question that everyone was considering about operational assignments and classified personnel management. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your assignment to custodial duties, was that part of a larger operational plan? Maya's expression became carefully neutral as she approached information that remained classified beyond the security clearances of everyone present, including General Thompson, whose authorization had enabled her tactical intervention. Lieutenant Colonel, certain assignments serve purposes that can't be discussed through normal channels. Sometimes the most valuable operators are those who maintain perfect invisibility while positioned where they can monitor threats and respond to situations that exceed conventional capabilities. The implications of Maya's response created understanding that military operations included layers of complexity and security measures that existed beyond normal personnel awareness or administrative oversight. Her assignment to custodial duties had served multiple purposes that weren't reflected in any official duty description or personnel management documentation. Master Sergeant Davis, whose security teams had been supported by Maya's tactical coordination during the engagement with hostile personnel, approached with the professional respect of someone who had witnessed command capabilities that transformed defensive failure into operational success. Staff Sergeant, the tactical coordination you provided to our security teams, that level of command expertise isn't developed through standard military training. Maya's response acknowledged operational experience that existed beyond conventional military education while maintaining appropriate classification boundaries about specific missions and training programs. Master Sergeant, command capabilities are developed through practical application under conditions where theoretical knowledge isn't sufficient for mission success or personnel survival. Some training occurs in environments that can't be officially acknowledged. Specialist Martinez, whose communication security problems had been effortlessly solved by Maya months earlier, finally understood the significance of technical assistance that had seemed impossibly sophisticated for someone assigned to custodial duties. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, when you helped me with encryption protocols, you were drawing on operational experience with classified communication systems. Maya nodded with the patience of someone explaining complex realities to personnel whose security clearances limited their understanding of operational capabilities and classified training programs. Specialist Martinez, technical expertise comes from practical application under operational conditions. Sometimes people know more about your specialty than their apparent qualifications suggest. The assembled officers began processing the implications of Maya's revelation for their understanding of military service, operational security, and the extraordinary people who sometimes accept assignments that require complete professional sacrifice for purposes that can't be publicly acknowledged or officially recognized. General Thompson's secure communication device provided additional information that validated Maya's operational background while maintaining appropriate classification boundaries about specific missions and training programs. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I'm receiving confirmation from higher command levels about your operational status and assignment authorization. Maya's expression showed the controlled patience of someone who had maintained classified identity for 18 months, while enduring treatment that challenged every principle of military respect and professional dignity. General Thompson, my operational status serves purposes that extend beyond normal personnel management or administrative oversight. Sometimes national security requires capabilities that exist beyond conventional acknowledgement. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of personnel from the Defense Intelligence Agency, whose security clearances enabled discussion of operational details that remain classified beyond the authorization levels of most assembled officers. Their presence indicated that Maya's tactical intervention had implications extending far beyond base-level security operations. Agent Sarah Chen from the Defense Intelligence Agency addressed Maya with the professional respect accorded to operators whose capabilities existed beyond normal special operations training and practical application. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the tactical methods you employed and the intelligence gathered from captured hostile personnel represent operational achievements that exceed standard mission parameters. Maya's response acknowledged operational success while maintaining appropriate boundaries about classified capabilities and training programs that couldn't be discussed in present company. Agent Chen, the operational methods employed were necessary for mission success under conditions that exceeded conventional defensive capabilities. The intelligence gathered should provide valuable information about hostile operations and potential future threats. The implications of Maya's tactical success extended beyond immediate mission completion to include intelligence gathering that would enhance American understanding of foreign operations and potential security threats. Her engagement with hostile personnel had not only prevented intelligence compromise, but had provided counterintelligence opportunities that strengthened national security operations. As the immediate crisis concluded and normal administrative operations resumed, Maya faced decisions about her future assignment and operational status that would determine whether she continued her deep cover mission or accepted recognition that would end her invisibility forever. The choice between continued service in classified operations and acknowledgement of achievements that could never be publicly celebrated represented the fundamental challenges faced by personnel whose capabilities existed beyond normal military recognition. Colonel Hawkins, whose systematic psychological abuse had been revealed as directed against someone whose operational achievements exceeded her comprehension, approached Maya with the humble recognition of someone whose assumptions about military competence had been shattered by witnessing capabilities that challenged conventional understanding. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I need you to understand that my behavior toward you represents the worst aspects of military leadership, Colonel Hawkins said with genuine remorse for treatment that violated every principle of professional respect and military courtesy. You endured systematic humiliation while protecting secrets that ensured our national security, maintaining operational discipline that exceeded anything I've witnessed in my entire career. Maya's response demonstrated the gracious professionalism that had characterized her behavior throughout months of abuse, revealing character that had been forged through experiences that would have destroyed personnel who hadn't been prepared through training that existed beyond conventional military education. Colonel Hawkins, military service requires accepting difficult assignments and maintaining mission focus regardless of personal treatment or professional recognition. Sometimes the greatest honor comes from serving without acknowledgement, protecting people who never know they needed protection, and accepting sacrifices that can't be publicly celebrated. The quiet custodial worker was gone forever, replaced by someone whose revealed capabilities would reshape understanding of operational excellence and military service among everyone who had witnessed her impossible transformation. But Maya Rodriguez understood that true military excellence wasn't demonstrated through recognition or acknowledgement. It was proven through actions taken when duty demanded capabilities that existed beyond conventional understanding, service that required personal sacrifice for purposes that couldn't be officially celebrated. Her choice about future assignment would determine whether she returned to invisible service or accepted recognition that would end the most successful deep cover operation in military history, a decision that would balance personal consideration against national security requirements that extended far beyond individual career advancement or professional acknowledgement. 6 months after the security crisis that had exposed Maya's impossible identity, Building 1444 had returned to its routine administrative function, but the atmosphere carried an undercurrent of respect and awareness that transformed every interaction between personnel who had witnessed the revelation of capabilities that officially didn't exist. Maya Rodriguez had made her choice about future assignment, and that decision would reshape understanding of military service among everyone who encountered her quiet presence. The morning sun streamed through the same reinforced windows as Maya performed the same custodial duties that had concealed her true identity for 18 months. But now her movements carried the unconscious authority of someone whose operational achievements had been witnessed by personnel, who would never again make assumptions about military capabilities based on apparent assignments or hierarchical positions. Lieutenant Sarah Kim approached Maya's work area with the respectful demeanor of someone seeking guidance from an operator whose tactical expertise had prevented national security catastrophe through methods that existed beyond conventional military training. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I wanted to thank you for the analytical assistance you provided months ago. Your correction of my threat assessment methodology saved hours of work. Maya's response demonstrated the same patient professionalism that had characterized her behavior during months of systematic humiliation, but now her words carried the weight of acknowledged expertise rather than concealed competence. Lieutenant Kim, analytical skills developed through practical application under operational conditions. Sometimes the best learning comes from recognizing that expertise exists in unexpected places. She continued organizing cleaning supplies while offering guidance that revealed operational experience extending far beyond anything reflected in her official assignment description. Threat assessment requires understanding that theoretical frameworks often prove inadequate when confronted with adversaries who operate beyond conventional parameters. Real analytical capability comes from experience with situations where mistakes have consequences that can't be corrected through administrative procedures. The conversation was observed by Captain Santos, who had requested assignment to Building 1444 specifically to work with Maya and learn from operational capabilities that existed beyond standard military training programs. His presence represented recognition that Maya's expertise warranted protection and utilization even within her deep cover assignment. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Captain Santos said as he approached with morning reports that required her unofficial review and assessment. The Intelligence Analysis Division has requested your perspective on communication security protocols for overseas operations. Maya accepted the classified documents with the calm competence of someone whose security clearance exceeded that of most field-grade officers, her review revealing analytical capabilities that had been developed through missions that existed beyond official acknowledgement or public recognition. Captain Santos, these protocols reflect theoretical understanding of communication security rather than practical experience with hostile countermeasures. Her assessment identified vulnerabilities that intelligence specialists had overlooked, operational considerations that could only be recognized by someone who had actually employed advanced communication systems under conditions where detection meant mission failure and personnel casualties. The frequency rotation algorithms need modification to account for adaptive listening systems that can predict pattern variations. The encryption methodologies assume hostile capabilities that are several generations behind current operational reality. The technical corrections Maya provided demonstrated expertise that existed beyond anything available through normal military education or professional development programs. Knowledge that had been acquired through practical application in environments where theoretical limitations could prove fatal to operational success. Specialist David Park, whose communication equipment had been effortlessly optimized by Maya during the security crisis, approached with equipment problems that had baffled technical specialists for multiple installations. Staff Sergeant, we're experiencing interference patterns that our technical manuals don't address. Could you provide guidance about potential solutions? Maya examined the communication systems with the immediate comprehension of someone who had designed and employed similar equipment under operational conditions that exceeded standard military requirements. Her diagnostic assessment revealed technical problems that conventional analysis had missed while identifying solutions that existed beyond normal technical documentation. The interference patterns suggest adaptive jamming systems that modify their operational characteristics based on your counter-jamming responses, Maya explained while making technical adjustments that demonstrated familiarity with classified communication systems. Your countermeasures need dynamic frequency allocation with randomized timing intervals that prevent hostile systems from predicting your communication patterns. The technical modifications Maya implemented transformed problematic communication systems into reliable operational tools, her expertise providing solutions that technical specialists with advanced degrees hadn't identified through conventional analytical approaches. Dr. Patricia Torres from the Advanced Research Laboratory arrived with classified projects that required assessment by personnel with operational experience extending beyond theoretical knowledge and academic study. Her consultation with Maya represented official acknowledgement of expertise that had been concealed beneath routine custodial duties for over 2 years. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, we're developing surveillance detection protocols for overseas operations, Dr. Torres explained while displaying technical specifications that remained classified beyond most security clearances. Your operational experience with hostile surveillance techniques could provide insights that laboratory testing can't replicate. Maya's review of the surveillance detection systems revealed fundamental design flaws that would have proven catastrophic under operational conditions. vulnerabilities that could only be identified by someone who had actually encountered sophisticated hostile surveillance in environments where detection meant capture or death. Dr. Torres, these detection protocols assume hostile surveillance capabilities that are outdated by several years. Current operational reality involves techniques that would defeat these countermeasures completely. Her technical recommendations included modifications that transformed theoretical surveillance detection systems into practical operational tools capable of identifying and countering hostile techniques that laboratory testing couldn't simulate or academic study couldn't anticipate. The consultation sessions that followed demonstrated why Maya's expertise warranted protection even within deep cover assignment that required maintaining apparent limitations and hierarchical invisibility. Her operational knowledge provided solutions to technical problems that had challenged specialists from multiple agencies and research institutions. Major Jennifer Walsh, whose logistics coordination had been revolutionized by Maya's unconscious expertise months earlier, approached with planning problems that required operational experience extending beyond administrative theory and academic study. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, we're coordinating supply operations for classified missions that require unconventional approaches to resource management. Maya's assessment of the logistics planning revealed coordination problems that would have resulted in mission failure through approaches that prioritized administrative efficiency over operational security and tactical requirements. Major Walsh, these supply coordination plans reflect garrison thinking rather than operational reality. Classified missions require logistics approaches that prioritize security and adaptability over administrative convenience. Her alternative planning methodologies demonstrated understanding of operational requirements that could only be developed through practical experience with missions where supply failures meant operational compromise and personnel casualties. The logistics frameworks Maya provided enabled successful coordination of complex operations that conventional planning approaches couldn't support. Colonel Patricia Newman from Fort Bragg arrived with personnel development questions that reflected growing recognition of Maya's expertise and the need to identify other operators who might possess similar capabilities concealed beneath routine assignments. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your operational background and deep cover assignment represent capabilities that our personnel development programs don't address. How do we identify and properly utilize personnel with classified expertise? Maya's response revealed understanding of military personnel management that extended beyond normal administrative approaches while maintaining appropriate classification boundaries about specific programs and operational requirements. Colonel Newman, personnel with classified backgrounds often accept assignments that don't reflect their actual capabilities for operational security reasons. Effective utilization requires understanding that apparent qualifications may not represent complete competence. She continued organizing supply inventories while providing guidance about personnel assessment that challenged conventional approaches to military career development and assignment management. Real operational capability often exists among personnel whose official records don't reflect their complete background. Sometimes the most valuable operators are those who accept apparent limitations for purposes that extend beyond individual career advancement. The personnel development discussions that followed demonstrated why Maya's insights warranted integration into military planning and training programs, even when her official assignment required maintaining invisibility and hierarchical limitations that concealed her true operational value. Sergeant First Class Michael Chen, who had requested transfer to Building 1444 after learning about Maya's background through classified channels, approached with professional development questions that reflected understanding of operational capabilities that existed beyond standard military training. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, how does someone develop the kind of expertise that enables success in impossible situations? Maya's response revealed training principles that had been developed through programs that existed beyond normal military education, while maintaining appropriate boundaries about specific methodologies and classified requirements. Sergeant Chen, operational expertise develops through practical application under conditions where theoretical knowledge proves insufficient. Real capability comes from experience with situations where success requires adaptation beyond conventional training. Her guidance about professional development challenged standard approaches to military training, while providing insights that could enhance operational capability among personnel who demonstrated potential for advanced assignments and specialized responsibilities. As Maya continued her routine custodial duties, her presence transformed Building 1444 into an unofficial center for operational consultation and professional development that attracted personnel from installations across multiple states. Her expertise provided solutions to problems that conventional approaches couldn't address, while maintaining the deep cover assignment that protected capabilities which officially didn't exist. The choice Maya had made about her future assignment reflected understanding that service sometimes required accepting limitations and maintaining invisibility for purposes that extended beyond individual recognition or career advancement. Her decision to continue deep cover operations while providing unofficial consultation demonstrated commitment to national security that transcended personal consideration. Colonel Hawkins, whose behavior toward Maya had been transformed by witnessing capabilities that challenged every assumption about military competence, approached with the humble respect of someone whose understanding of leadership had been revolutionized through witnessing operational excellence that exceeded conventional imagination. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to know that observing your professional conduct has changed my entire approach to military leadership, Colonel Hawkins said with genuine admiration for capabilities that had been concealed beneath systematic humiliation and professional abuse. Your example demonstrates that true military excellence exists among personnel whose achievements can't be measured through conventional recognition or administrative acknowledgement. Maya's response demonstrated the gracious professionalism that had characterized her behavior throughout the most difficult periods of her deep cover assignment, revealing character that had been developed through training and experience that existed beyond normal military education. On shore, Colonel Hawkins. Military leadership requires recognizing that extraordinary people sometimes accept ordinary assignments for extraordinary reasons. The most effective leaders understand that capabilities exist beyond apparent qualifications, and that respect should be based on competence rather than rank or recognition. The transformation in Building 1444's operational culture represented acknowledgement that military excellence existed among personnel whose true capabilities remained concealed for operational security reasons, creating understanding that would reshape approaches to leadership development and personnel utilization across multiple installations and command levels. Maya Rodriguez had chosen to remain invisible, continuing service that required personal sacrifice, while providing capabilities that officially didn't exist to personnel who would never fully understand the operational value of their quiet custodial worker whose forgotten achievements exceeded anything they could imagine. The epilogue began 3 years later when a new group of young officers arrived at Building 1444 for their first administrative assignment, carrying the same arrogant confidence and hierarchical assumptions that had once characterized Colonel Hawkins and her staff. They moved through the building with the casual superiority of personnel who had never questioned their place in the military hierarchy or encountered capabilities that existed beyond their understanding of professional competence. Second Lieutenant Amanda Foster strode through the main entrance with her freshly pressed uniform and newly minted commission, followed by 3 other junior officers whose conversation filled the administrative area with familiar discussions about theoretical military excellence and the intellectual limitations of enlisted personnel assigned to support roles. Maya Rodriguez was restocking supply cabinets near the conference room, her movements carrying the same methodical precision that had characterized her work for over 4 years, when Lieutenant Foster's voice cut across the building with casual cruelty that could have been lifted directly from Colonel Hawkins' old playbook. "Coffee black, no sugar," Lieutenant Foster announced without looking at Maya, her tone carrying the automatic expectation of immediate compliance that came from officers who had never learned that respect was earned through actions rather than rank insignia. Maya nodded silently and prepared the coffee, while Lieutenant Foster continued her conversation with the other newly assigned officers. Their discussion focused on personnel management theories and the importance of maintaining appropriate expectations for enlisted soldiers who lacked the educational background required for demanding military responsibilities. "The problem with today's enlisted personnel," Lieutenant Foster was saying, her voice loud enough to carry across the entire administrative area, "is that they don't understand the intellectual demands of real military service. Support roles attract soldiers who lack the mental capacity for positions that require actual leadership and analytical thinking." Captain Santos, who had remained at Building 1444 specifically to observe and learn from Maya's operational expertise, watched the familiar pattern developing with the grim satisfaction of someone who understood exactly what these arrogant young officers were about to encounter. Lieutenant Jackson Rodriguez nodded eagerly at Lieutenant Foster's observations, clearly hoping to demonstrate his superior understanding of military hierarchy and personnel management. "Ma'am, I've noticed that custodial staff often think they understand military operations because they overhear conversations about subjects that are completely beyond their comprehension level." Maya's hand paused for just a fraction of a second as she set down the coffee cup, a movement so subtle that only Captain Santos noticed, but the reaction carried implications that would reshape these officers' understanding of military service in ways they couldn't imagine. The systematic humiliation began immediately, with Lieutenant Foster using Maya's presence to demonstrate her theoretical knowledge of military leadership while educating her subordinates about the importance of maintaining realistic expectations for enlisted personnel who obviously lacked the qualifications for demanding assignments. "Our custodial worker probably thinks cleaning supplies and routine maintenance give her insights into military operations," Lieutenant Foster announced to her assembled colleagues, her cruel amusement echoing through the administrative area while Maya continued her silent work routine. But this time, the audience included personnel who understood exactly what Lieutenant Foster was attempting to humiliate. Captain Santos exchanged knowing glances with Master Sergeant Davis, whose security teams had been supported by Maya's tactical coordination during the crisis that had validated her impossible background. Dr. Jennifer Torres from the Advanced Research Laboratory entered the building with classified consultation materials, her presence representing the unofficial recognition that Maya's expertise warranted protection even within her deep cover assignment that required maintaining apparent limitations and hierarchical invisibility. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," Dr. Torres said with the respectful professionalism that had characterized interactions with Maya since her operational capabilities had been revealed, "we need your assessment of the surveillance detection protocols for the upcoming overseas operation." The transformation in the room's atmosphere was immediate and dramatic. Lieutenant Foster stared at Dr. Torres with complete incomprehension, unable to process why a senior civilian contractor would be requesting technical consultation from someone she had just finished dismissing as intellectually inferior custodial staff. Maya accepted the classified documents with calm competence that radiated professional authority, her review revealing analytical capabilities that existed beyond anything these junior officers had encountered during their comfortable academic training and theoretical military education. "Dr. Torres, these detection protocols need modification to account for adaptive surveillance systems that can defeat conventional countermeasures," Maya said with the quiet authority of someone whose operational experience extended far beyond normal military training. "The frequency analysis algorithms assume hostile capabilities that are outdated by current operational standards." Lieutenant Foster's mouth fell open as Maya provided technical corrections that demonstrated expertise in classified surveillance detection systems, her casual competence revealing knowledge that exceeded anything these junior officers possessed despite their advanced degrees and recent military education. The most devastating moment came when Brigadier General Patricia Morrison arrived for her monthly consultation with Maya about operational planning for classified missions that required expertise existing beyond conventional military training programs and academic study. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," General Morrison said with the genuine respect that field-grade officers reserve for operators whose capabilities had been proven under impossible conditions, "we need your operational assessment of the tactical coordination requirements for the upcoming classified mission in Southeast Asia." The silence that followed stretched across seconds that felt like hours as Lieutenant Foster processed the impossible sight of a general officer seeking tactical advice from someone she had spent the morning humiliating for supposed intellectual limitations and professional incompetence. Maya's response demonstrated the same gracious professionalism that had characterized her behavior during months of systematic abuse from Colonel Hawkins, her words carrying the weight of operational experience that existed beyond anything these junior officers could comprehend. "General Morrison, the tactical coordination framework needs modification to account for hostile capabilities that conventional planning doesn't address," Maya said while reviewing classified operational documents. "The mission requirements exceed standard tactical approaches and will require countermeasures that exist beyond normal military training." Lieutenant Foster sat frozen in her chair as the complete magnitude of her mistake became clear. The woman she had mocked for intellectual limitations was providing tactical assessment to general officers about classified operations that existed beyond her security clearance and professional understanding. Captain Santos approached Lieutenant Foster with the patient expression of someone who had learned valuable lessons about assumptions and military competence through witnessing capabilities that challenged conventional understanding of operational excellence. Lieutenant Foster, I'd like to introduce you to Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, call sign Shadow Knife, formerly of Delta Force Advanced Operations Division, Captain Santos said with quiet satisfaction. The woman you've been lecturing about intellectual limitations has operational achievements that exceed anything you'll encounter in your entire military career. The revelation hit the assembled junior officers like physical blows, transforming their understanding of military hierarchy and professional competence in ways that would reshape their approach to leadership for the remainder of their service. Maya turned to address the stunned officers with the same gentle patience she had shown during the worst periods of Colonel Hawkins' systematic cruelty, her words carrying wisdom that could only be developed through experience with situations that existed beyond conventional military understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, today you've learned the most important lesson of military service, Maya said while returning to her routine custodial duties. Never assume you understand someone's complete capabilities based on their apparent assignment or hierarchical position. The quiet person cleaning your office might be someone who once saved your country from threats you never knew existed. She paused in her cleaning routine to deliver guidance that would transform these officers' understanding of military excellence and professional respect. Real military competence isn't demonstrated through rank insignia or educational credentials. It's proven through actions taken when duty demands capabilities that exist beyond conventional training, service that requires personal sacrifice for purposes that can't be publicly acknowledged. As Maya continued her invisible work, the junior officers began processing implications that would reshape their understanding of military service, operational security, and the extraordinary people who sometimes accept ordinary assignments for extraordinary reasons. The story of Shadow Knife would continue, hidden beneath routine custodial duties, while protecting capabilities that officially didn't exist, serving purposes that extended beyond individual recognition or career advancement. Her presence reminded everyone who encountered her that heroes don't always announce themselves with fanfare and publicity. Sometimes they just show up when you need them most, save everything you care about, and return to ordinary life until the next time. Extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary responses from people whose true capabilities remain concealed until the moment when revealing them becomes absolutely necessary. Because some storms arrive from directions you never see coming, piloted by heroes who prefer to remain invisible until visibility becomes the only way to protect everything they've sworn to defend. If this story inspired you to look beyond surface appearances and recognize that extraordinary people exist everywhere around us, hit that subscribe button and join our community of viewers who understand that respect should be based on character and competence rather than titles and recognition. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever encountered someone whose true capabilities far exceeded their apparent position? Let us know where you're watching from, and remember that the most dangerous assumption we can make is thinking we know someone's complete story, based only on what we can see. The greatest heroes often hide in plain sight, waiting for their moment to change the world while serving quietly among us, protecting people who never know they needed protection, until the day when their extraordinary capabilities become absolutely essential for saving everything we hold dear. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel